Hi everyone, my name is Emma, this is Emma Rose and Books, and I guess long time no see. Sorry I didn't upload last week. Basically, the summer holidays have started, so I've got the kids at home. That has an impact. Last week, due to all sorts of reasons, I didn't have any childcare, and it meant that just the opportunities for filming a video ran away from me. I should have batch filmed one, but there we are. And on top of that, I took part in Camp NaNoWriMo, so that finished last week, and that just totally took over my life because I ran a bit behind with it. Because I only worked 2 days a week, I was writing on those days and just wasn't getting through the word count that I needed. So then as I reached the final week and I still had something like 35,000 words to write, I kind of thought, oh no, I can't do this in a week. And basically I binge wrote, and it will be interesting when I start doing the edits because I'm pretty sure some of it is just complete nonsense. And I didn't win Camp Nano, but the reason for that is it was the penultimate night. I had 20,000 words left in the last 2 days, and I thought, you know what, if I stay up late, I'll try. And I finished on something like 36,000 words, and that was on that penultimate night because I reached the end of the book. And so I thought, well, rather than kill myself just to try and find another 10,000 words worth of stuff to write, or sorry, it wouldn't be 14,000 words of stuff to write. This was also really late at night and I was very tired. I thought, no, we'll call it a day. First draft is done. It doesn't matter that I didn't win Camp Nano because it did what I wanted it to do. It meant that I lie. Get out, just get out. Why does it want to be around me? Did it go? It went. It went. The fly's gone. Right, well, I'm sorry if you could hear it in the beginning of that. Yeah, so as I say, Camp NaNoWriMo did what I wanted it to do. I finished the first draft of my book. It did give me that impetus, so that's great. But it did mean that my head was just in this place of writing. Honestly, I feel like I've been in a fog because I had like a week of Camp Nano, and then the kids were off, and then I had all these events I was attending as well, with a charity where I had some books as well, and I'd be at these really long events, and you know when things just blur together because you've been so busy. And yeah, as I say, last week I just, there was no opportunity, and I thought, you know what, I need to take a break. And honestly, I would say probably yesterday. Yeah, yesterday is probably the first day where I felt like I'm like out of that fog of busyness. Let me close the window a little bit, sorry, so the fly could get out. I feel like I can sort of think again, and this morning, so what's the time now? It's 12 something. This morning I've sort of cleared lots of admin, bits of paper that have been hanging around, you know, because I needed to type things up or, you know, file stuff or whatever. I've been sort of clearing the decks, and it just, things feel a little bit more under control, and actually filming this video is part of that. It's like, right, and then I've got my filming done, and then I've got, you know, and all these things that have been hanging over my head that have just sort of fallen by the wayside because of everything. Yeah. Anyway, all of that also meant that I didn't read as much as I wanted to, which was a shame, but inevitable really. So hopefully August will be a better reading month for me. That said, I did read 4 books, so you know, not so shabby. Anyway, I'll go through them and do my usual review thing. It's a mixed bunch as always. So the first book that I read, I've been meaning to read all year actually. This is Mapping the Deep. And in fact, it was on my Goodreads account as I like currently reading, but I hadn't actually started currently reading it. It was just at my bedside table. When was this released? 2002, I'm going to guess. 2000. Shush. And I got this book along with a book called Neutral Buoyancy that I really want to get hold of and reread. But I got hold of this book when I was at uni, so I was at uni, I started in 2002, so it wasn't that old, and read it and absolutely adored it. I like Neutral Buoyancy better. This is still the same copy that I've had since then, and I just fancied a reread of it because I remembered it being really good. And I've been trying to read a few more kind of sea-based things because my degree's in marine biology. I've been trying to get back into reading some more marine biology, sea-type stuff. I read a whole load of mermaid books earlier in the year, partially because that's a thing that I loved years ago and I just want to get a bit back into it. And secondly, my current book that I will make a video in the next couple of weeks about the next book that I'm going to release. That has a sea theme, and so does the book after that. So because I'm kind of writing in that genre, I want to read around it too. I definitely will be revealing more soon. So watch this space. I'm really excited, and actually some information went out in my newsletter. But yeah, the next couple of weeks I will be revealing all about that forthcoming book, which will actually be out within the next sort of 2 months, I hope. Anyway, another reason why I'm really busy. So, mapping the deep. Stop waffling. Stop waffling on about my life. Right. Robert Kunzig. I don't know if that's how you say his name. So this book, on the back it says, Mapping the Deep is a state of the ocean report on the sea and its science. After amazing you at how little you know of the ocean, Kunzig draws you into a compelling narrative of oceanographers past and present, scientists, pioneers, maverick thinkers, deep water divers and submersible pilots. This is a hugely informative page-turner that confirms Robert Kunzig's position in the forefront of popular science writers. So basically in this book, as it says, it goes through the history of knowing what's at the bottom of the ocean. So it goes through all the different scientists that have contributed to that, contributed. And it talks about like plate tectonics and the deep sea ridges where the Earth's crust is sort of generated, and the stuff that taught them about plate movements. You can tell I really took it in. And talking about how they found out what was on the sea floor, and about how like initially the maps were kind of guesstimated, and then as technology's improved, and it talks about what the technology is, so looking at like radar type things, and looking at like submersibles and all the various mapping techniques and what they mean in terms of like cost and scale and technology requirements and all that. So it builds all of that up, which is really interesting, although personally for me, I was never a big fan of oceanography aside from it informing how the life lives down there. So it is very oceanography heavy. However, what I like is it then does go into the biology of sort of all weird and wonderful creatures and how they live and where they live. And there's some absolutely brilliant examples in there. I did mean to earmark some, I wonder if I actually did. And so from that point of view, for me as someone who studied marine biology, it has enough biology in it that I can overlook the oceanography that isn't like my massive interest. But you know, this book is now what, 20 years old nearly, and so I would love to read something more up to date. And if anyone's got any recommendations on sort of well, any kind of marine science, anything about like what they know now about the deep oceans, or about the life that lives there, any of that kind of thing, like popular science type books like this, whoop, I'd be really interested. So please do leave your recommendations below, because yeah, this basically it focuses on the scientists and like the stories of the scientists, as opposed to just loads of information. It like talks about how they did the experiments that they did and the challenges that they faced, and how, you know, some of them were by chance and some of the, and I like that it centres on the people, the thinkers who pushed this science forward. So yeah, that's really good. So if anyone's got any recommendations, I'd definitely like to know what's happened in the last 20 years in this field. So yeah, I'd really recommend that. Let me see, because I will have taken pictures of any quotes that I liked. Let's see if I've got any. No, I knew I'd recorded something. Page 83. What did I think worthy of taking a photo? Let's see. In Iceland, you can walk along the mid-Atlantic ridge at a place called Thingvellir. I don't know how to speak Icelandic. You can stroll down into a narrow volcanic fissure, climb over lava boulders and touch the walls of basalt, and then picnic on the lush grass, gazing up at sun and birds. A few hundred yards away on a peaceful lake stand weekend retreats for people from Reykjavik. This part of the ridge on the western flank is relatively quiet now. Blah 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 blah. But that's so cool that you can actually walk along part of the mid-Atlantic ridge like you think of it as being, you know, under the sea. And yeah, there's a bit of it that's actually in Iceland. I'd love to go to Iceland. Anyone been to Iceland? Tell me below. I think that's probably the only quote I actually earmarked. There were some really cool things about a siphonophore. Let me find it. There's like stuff about bioluminescence and that's really interesting, but there's these, the sea creatures that I found interesting were, where have they gone? Oh yeah, yes, see, now I'm flicking through it, all these things that I wanted to talk about coming back to me. There was a picture of one of these fellas. Yeah, in here. These guys, siphonophores. There are some coloured plates in here as well, by the way, coloured ones, but there's also black and white photos. And there's just, oh yes, salps. So there's just these weird creatures that like put out fishing nets and catch things. I thought they were really cool, and there's quite a lot of information in here about them. And some of them like switch sexes and things like that, so there's some really cool biology going on in there. And like a really massive jellyfish, and I loved all of that stuff, really cool. And then there's a section in here about, and I remember this being a thing back when I was studying marine biology, and again I would love to know what's gone on here, where they were talking about how to tackle climate change by greening the oceans. That's the name of the chapter in here. So the idea is that marine creatures like marine algae and stuff are deficient in iron. So if you seed the seas with iron, then you'll get a massive algal bloom that can absorb the carbon dioxide that's been released into the air. And the scientists in here saying if it came to it, we can do it, but then they don't know what the knock-on effects would be for other creatures. Obviously, if you've got a massive bloom of algae, then potentially you then have creatures feeding off of that then would have a massive boom, and then they would be taking oxygen from the water, so I would figure that that would have an impact. And equally, like changing the balance of nutrients and things as that algae dies off, and then what happens to that. And I mean, anyone who learned about eutrophication, which is like a favourite in geography in school, you know, imagine, I mean, it wouldn't be to that scale in the oceans, but I mean, surely there'd be, I don't know. So, and equally it talks about the limitations and all of that, but in theory I find that really interesting that there's kind of a biological answer potentially to climate change, obviously, since in the last 20 years concern has grown so massively, and awareness and all of that. Again, I'd love to know where that science is at. And then there's a section about cod in here. Now, back in these days I didn't eat cod. It's funny, it's all changed. Back then I was really fussy about what fish I ate, but ate meat, and now I don't eat meat, and I pretty much eat most fish. But I don't eat cod very often, and I will usually choose other things as a preference, because I believe it's about eating a variety. But I also know that some of the cod stocks have recovered, and it talks in here about the overfishing and about kind of how it couldn't be brought under control because of the money side of things and all of that. And just the massive effect that it's had on cod stocks, but that because of various protection things that have come into place, that some cod are recovering, and I do make sure that the cod that I buy is from those stocks. There's, if anyone's interested, you can look online at the Good Fish Guide, which is, I think, on the Marine Conservation Society's website, if I remember rightly, and there's actually a whole book that you can buy, but that talks about, you know, which fish, if you're buying them, and when you buy fish you can see if it's got the MSC tick on, which is the Marine Stewardship Council tick, that kind of gives you an idea if it's sustainable. But yeah, so I do try and eat sustainable fish, but back then, yeah, the cod was in such a dire state that I didn't dare eat it. So yeah, the stuff in there is really interesting on that too. So as I say, I'd love I'd love to know what's happened in the last 20 years, because that was really interesting. Let's move on from that. So the next book I read, I think I'm doing these in order, was Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow, which I really need to return to the library. I did renew it, but did I renew it for this long? I'm not sure. Anyway, this, my son and I both read the first one, and then he came across the second one. The reason we haven't returned it actually is because we didn't get it from our usual library, and we haven't been to the town that we got this from, so we need to. That's the annoying thing, is that you can't return books to like the wrong library. So anyway, so this one is the second in the Nevermoor series. So spoilers, skip forward like 30 seconds if you haven't read the first book, but this is all in the blurb for the second book, and you know, so if you look the second book up then you'd find it out. But anyway, are you ready? You can skip now if you haven't read it. Morrigan Crow has escaped her deadly curse and joined the Wondrous Society. It promises her protection, friendship and belonging for life. But then Morrigan doesn't receive the welcome she hoped for. Morrigan is a rare Wundersmith, but instead of the Society helping her to embrace her power, they seem to want her to suppress her mysterious ability at all costs. And then there's more blurb after that, but that kind of gives you an overview. So the book is about her time in the Wondrous Society, and the things that happened to her. And my son hasn't read it at all. I think he said he read the beginning of it. He really hasn't got into this series. Personally, I like it. I don't like it as much as maybe some other children's series. If I see it, I will pick up the next instalment, you know, but I'm not going to go out of my way for it. But I do like it. The reason I like it is because it's a bit dark, and for me, I've always liked children's books. You know, when I was a child, I liked children's books that were a bit dark, because I think that it's good not to shy away from, you know, the darkness in life and try and make everything like fluffy bunnies, you know. But I think it's very imaginative. I like the setting, I like the tone. It's kind of slightly humorous in the way it's told, so I love all of that. I enjoyed the story. I wasn't like totally gripped by it, but I did really enjoy it. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a series for a kid. I mean, my son's coming up for 9, and it's definitely like his age range appropriate. As I say, he didn't get into it, but you know, just a taste thing, I guess. But yeah, it's good. Didn't adore it, but I did like it. So I think that for me, you know, in the way that, say, Harry Potter had me gripped to find out what happened next, this just doesn't do it. I'm intrigued by certain aspects of it. I tell you what I really like about it is the whole idea of like, is she good or is she bad, and that she doesn't know, nobody really knows, and yeah, that concept is amazing. But I think that the school is really interesting, but I don't think it's as rich as the schools as Hogwarts in Harry Potter. It's you know, it's different, and it has its own imagination to it, but I think the way that Harry Potter draws you in, because of its familiarity with like boarding school type books, that maybe sits more comfortably than what is created in this book. I think maybe it's just not quite so reminiscent or in that way. So yeah, I didn't feel like I think Harry Potter, I mean, you can't help but compare it with Harry Potter, I guess, because they're both magical with a child, and I don't know. But if we compare it, that's like to me, a more cosy and more gripping story. This, I would say, is lighter in some ways, because, I mean, both have like quite dark themes, but this is written in a more kind of amusing way, and I would say that the characters aren't as complex in my opinion, or they're not as rich, but they're still really good in their own way, and it has a different feel to it. I think you could draw comparisons with the first one, stronger comparisons with Harry Potter, but it's totally gone off on a tangent now with the second book. But it's yeah, to me, like, it is very different, and stylistically different, but it, to me, just as I say, it doesn't do the same thing for me. It's not as gripping, it's not as yeah, just not as much my thing, but still a good book nonetheless. Then I read The Virgin Blue by Tracy Chevalier. This my mother-in-law lent to me because she really enjoyed it, so she recommended it. Tracy Chevalier wrote The Girl with the Pearl Earring, and I think I've said on here before, I've read Girl with the Pearl Earring, but I don't remember a great deal about it. I remember quite liking it, I just don't, and I kind of remember the plot, but I think it was just a really long time ago. And so, yeah, I was interested to read this. And let me tell you a little bit of the blurb. So it says, the compelling story of two women born centuries apart and the ancestral legacy that binds them. Ella Turner tries hard to fit into the small, close-knit community of the French town that she has moved to. She even changes her name back to Tournier and knocks the rust off her high school French. Isolated and lonely, she is drawn to investigate her Tournier ancestry with heart-wrenching results. Oh, and then the other side of the story is Isabelle de Moulin, known as La Rousse because of her fiery red hair, is tormented and shunned in her village, suspected of witchcraft and reviled for her association with the Virgin Mary. When she becomes pregnant, she has no choice but to marry into the arrogant Tournier family. Tormentor becomes husband, and a shocking fate awaits her, as Ella Turner discovers 400 years later. So firstly, I loved the style of this book. It felt very French. The setting was beautifully written, and just the language in general I really, really enjoyed. The two stories are told slightly differently, even in that the modern day story, proper speech marks are used, and in the older version there's just like a dash and then the sentence, so it's like literally written differently. One thing I liked about this is that I don't really know anything about the Hyuga Nose, which this is related to, and I would love to know more, but so that's, yeah, it's a part of history that I don't really know anything about, which made it more compelling and more interesting. I really liked the ancestral story, but actually equally the modern day story was maybe more gripping. So like the older story to me was more kind of, I guess, shocking, and then the modern day one I found a bit more readable, because they were written in a different style. I enjoyed the plot, but I couldn't help but be slightly pulled out of it by, so there's a plot device where in the family, women in the family, their hair starts to turn red, and I understood why it was there and I enjoyed it in a way. It was a fun way of doing it, but like people's hair doesn't turn red. It can look red in certain light, but it doesn't literally turn red as far as I know. I mean, I'm not a hairdresser, but I mean, it turns grey. That I know about. When you're reading a historical novel, I feel that you want to read something that is believable. It felt too fantasy in that respect, but on the other hand, it was like a fun plot device. There's also a thing in this book, it's really hard to explain without giving spoilers, but there's this dream, and this dream is sort of special, and again, it was like too mystical. I mean, for me, I think in a book that's kind of trying to be, like I said, historical, to me, those aspects of it, just, although I enjoyed them, just made it, I just felt that I would rather it was like more believable, if that makes sense. But in general, I really liked the characters. I thought they were really well written. I thought it was an interesting plot. It was, you know, shocking and gripping and compelling and all of those things. As I say, just for me, I would have taken out those like mystical elements because it just detracted from it for me. But it was still really good. I really enjoyed it. And I would like to read her other book, Falling Angels. In fact, she was doing a book signing in Canterbury, which is near me, and I didn't go. So I should have done, really. But yeah, I did really enjoy it. I would recommend it. Yeah, good one. So there's that. Is it based on a painting? Is this a painting? I don't know. Tell me if this is it the same thing. Cover shows a detail from Portrait of Madame. No, I don't think so. It'd be cool if that was what she did. She like always took a painting and made a story out of it, but I don't think that's the thing. Anyway, then I wanted to read something short and kind of brainless, and so I read the next in a series of unfortunate events. I have already read the first one. I am too old to have read this when I was a kid. This came out in, let's see, where's the prelim page? This came out in 1999, so I was 15, so I was just a bit too old to be reading a series of unfortunate events. I think I wasn't target audience, and so yeah, my son likes them, so I'm kind of getting into them now. I'm sorry I keep shifting about, I can't get comfortable. So this is the Reptile room. A bit of the blurb, it says, the story may seem cheery at first when the Baudelaire children spend time in the company of some interesting reptiles and a giddy uncle, but don't be fooled. If you know anything at all about the unlucky Baudelaire children, you already know that even pleasant events lead down the same road to misery. So similarly to Wundersmith, I like the fact that this has dark elements to it. I would say I prefer this series in many ways. I think that it's a fun way that it's written, that Lemony Snicket is trying to tell the world about these ill-fated children, like the idea of a fictional author. I do like that. I like that it uses complex words, but that becomes a thing within the text. So it will say, you know, that it's used the word, let's see if I can find an example. So for example, it says here, Uncle Monty's face clouded over, a phrase which here means took on a slightly gloomy look as Uncle Monty thought about his bad luck. There are examples, I mean obviously clouded over is a common use commonly used phrase, but there are examples in here, I just can't find any, of like words that maybe a child wouldn't know, but because it always gives the context, but it's done in the same way where it'll say like this word here means, or a phrase which here means, and then gives a description of the word. And so I like that it makes the author able to use certain kinds of language, but it's explained in the text. So I like that. I like the characters. Uncle Monty's a really good character, and the settings are interesting. I liked the stuff about the snakes. It felt believable, even though they're fictional snakes, but yeah, it felt like they could be real. The characters are just really good in this, and the way that the writer says things like, well, you know it's going to come out badly, and you know, oh, I wish I could tell you that everything's going to be okay, and maybe you should stop reading. And so yeah, I like that. I just really like the style. For me, these books only take about an hour to read as well, so it's just a really nice way. As I say, I was really limited this month, so just being able to read something that doesn't take very long, and I didn't have to think about, it's a child's book, you know. So yeah, I definitely really like these, and I'm going to slowly work my way through the series. My son's got the third one, so I shall read that one at some point. So that was it. As I say, a varied bunch, 2 children's books and a non-fiction about the sea, and then a fiction, well, I suppose semi-fiction, historical fiction, that's the word I'm looking for, about the about Hyuga Nose. And I'm hoping this month to read a bit more, and currently I'm reading Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, which I'm really enjoying, so we shall see. I haven't really got any plans for what I'm going to be reading in August, but join me next month for my wrap up and you'll find out. As ever, please do tell me in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. Please like if you did, and please subscribe for more videos about reading and about writing, and don't forget that coming up will be my new book. So take care and have a lovely summer. Bye!